So let's talk about the last one, altruistic service, because PB believes that the philosopher will serve others in the world. And we know from Buddhism and other teachings that even upon realization, the compassion of the sage is, or bodhisattva, is so great that they stay in the world to serve others. And there's two sides of this. On the one hand, PB points out that if we haven't fully developed a mature personality, very often our service will be selfish or egoistic, and it won't be true service. It will not serve its purpose. So on the one hand, we have to develop the personality, and to the extent that we have developed the personality in these four ways we've been talking about, we seek to serve others using what we have developed and been given. So he says, the philosopher recognizes the universality and the oneness of being in others and practices altruism with joy. It's not a burden to be helping others. It's joyful. Mm-hmm. When you see that there's an overself in them and there's an overself in you and you link them, then you practice altruism with joy. The philosophic attitude is that a person should perform their full duty to the world. So we don't escape from our responsibilities to become spiritual. We fulfill our responsibilities in the world in such a way that it will bring injury to no one. Truth, honesty, and honor will not be sacrificed for money. Time, energy, capacity, and money will be used wisely in the best interest of humanity. And above all, the philosopher will constantly pray that the overself will accept them as a dedicated instrument of service, and it surely will. So again, here comes in the prayer. We pray to the overself to be used as a channel to help others, and we do that with joy.
Mm-hmm. Because somebody who has knowledge, is touched by the overself, of course, what else this person could do besides service others, since that is so natural process, as Paul Brunton speak about his own path, his own life, what is so naturally for these beings like to teach, to help others in their way that is possible. But he point out something isn't to do by, could be compassionate, is of course involve compassion, but involve love, but with discernment. Isn't something to help everyone who show up in your life. Isn't about that. It's about to help, and their way to help is that when the over self guide you. That is the difference between help and really serves. Because you have to serve in the correct way, is that serve that because when we are in the path, in this level of the path, we only do what the overself indicated to do. And for that, Michael has one example that person that PB said to give money for one and not the other.
There's an interesting story. PB was walking down the street in New York with my teacher, Anthony, and there was a beggar on one side of the street and the other side of the street. And so the question was, should we give money to this beggar? And PB said to Anthony, go across the street and give money to that one, not the one in front. So what was going on? PB had an insight into the character of the person and who was the real beggar, who was really in need, mm-hmm. and who wasn't really sincerely begging, and he was able to direct the money to the right person.
And so, even the life of PB, and correct, because why PB decided don't stop like to answer questions from people who write it to him, why he stopped like to have this life more reclusive, more, dedicated for writing. Of course, because some people could say, how you are so egoistic, you don't help nobody. No, he needs to be, recruited in order to write, in order to live the life of the overself wanted for him.
So if PB's true and deeper service was to write books, mm-hmm. and if he had so many letters to answer each day that he couldn't write, mm-hmm. he had to tell people, I'm not going to answer my letters anymore, which is what Grant is referring to.
Mhm.
And many people were upset. And on the surface, it seems selfish, but he was really obeying the dictates of his overself
Mhm.
to do the deeper service that he was here to provide. So he says, the only authentic mandate for spiritual service must come, if it does not come from a master, from within one's higher self. If it comes from the ego, then it is an unnecessary intrusion into other people's lives, which can do little good, however excellent the intention. So we think of many spiritual teachers like Yogananda, who was asked by his teacher to come to the US. Then it was a mandate for spiritual service from a master, but it could also come from within. So just finishing up, warning us about egoism, PB says, if you begin to think of yourself as the doer of this service, the helper of these people, you begin to set up the ego again. It will act as a barricade between you and the higher impersonal power. The spiritual effectiveness of your activity will begin to dwindle. So let's go back to the beginning and summarize why this development that PB is referring to is important, why we need to develop the whole personality. And I want to mention, we remember the overself is in the center of the star. And one thing that Anthony, PB's, my teacher and PB student said, the fivefold path is something which is brought to completion by the radiation coming from the overself. The completion will not take place with that. It's hardly likely that you will know what religious veneration truly is or mystical meditation unless your overself guides you in these things. So we're always praying, we're always looking, we're always opening ourselves to the guidance of the higher power in doing this work on ourselves that PB says we must do. And he says, just some concluding quotes. The more I travel and observe, the more I come to believe that the only people who will make something worthwhile of philosophy are those who have already made something worthwhile of their personal lives. And then he says, the highest goal of the quest is not illumination gained by destruction of the ego, but rather by perfection of the ego. So there's a point we'll see in another presentation when we talk about illumination, that we're not getting rid of our egos. We're not destroying our egos. PB says it is the function of egoism which is to be destroyed, not that which functions. The ego's rulership is to go, not the ego itself. And finally, one last quote. The ego cannot be destroyed so long as we need its services while in the flesh, but it can be subjugated and turned into a servant instead of permitting it to remain a master. With this understood, the philosophical ideal of a fully developed, mastered, and richly rounded ego acting as a channel for the inspiration and guidance of the higher self will be better appreciated. So the fully developed, mastered, and richly rounded ego is the five-pointed star. And when the five-pointed star is fully developed so that all the points are equal and fully actualized, then we have an ego which can truly serve the divine and which can truly make a difference in the world and in the lives of others. So that's what we want. We want to enlighten ourselves and enlighten others, and we see that we do both at the same time. So that's our talk on the five-pointed star. Thank you for your attention, and we hope you'll take this seriously and reflect on which parts of the star you need to develop more and how to become the beautiful star that PB is referring to us to.
See you next encounter. And as Michael said, we are planning to have one video in illumination that if you are interested to know more, we'll be there in some moments soon. Bye-bye.